Histories of sound recording are often built around a series of dates marking the introduction of key technologies. These dates provide the scaffolding for a compelling story about the evolution of popular music and, in particular, a story about the transformational impact multi-track recording has had on the field of possibility for the genre. While we recognize the importance of this history and its relevance to the theme of this conference, Dylan and I are concerned here with what one might call the prehistory and post-history of multi-track recording. For our talk today, we've adopted an expansive understanding of the terms multi-track and recording, an understanding that embraces a broad array of techniques for capturing and layering the diverse experiences that make up our musics, our cultures, our environments, and other manifestations of life on this earth. The prehistoric multi-track recording technology par excellence was not invented so much as it was discovered. The manufacture of this technology began with the slaughter of a calf and the soaking of the young animal's skin in a calcium hydroxide solution for over a week. In medieval Europe, the knife that was used to scrape the calf's hair off the skin was called a lunarium, as it was shaped like the crescent moon. After it was cleaned, scraped, stretched on a rack, and scraped again, the skin was left to dry in the sun. Once fully dry and cut into sheets, the skin, now called vellum, was sold as a literal blank page upon which one could record thoughts in the form of written symbols.
Of course, the page that was once the calf's skin was never fully blank, was it?
Manufacturing vellum was an expensive and labor-intensive enterprise, and so it often happened that the calfskin page was deemed more valuable than the words that had been written upon it. Medieval scribes developed techniques for scraping or washing the ink off of the page. Once the original text had been effectively erased, a fresh set of symbols could be recorded on the vellum. Unbeknownst to the lunarium-wielding scribe, however, sometimes, decades or centuries after the original text was scraped off the surface, ink that had seeped deeper into the calfskin began to oxidize. In so doing, a shadowy version of the original reappeared and became entangled with the newer text.
The resultant unintentional multi-track recording was given the Latin name palimpsestus, drawing upon Greek roots meaning to rub clean and again.
The palimpsest is thus the result of successive acts of partial erasure and reinscription, acts that turn it into a multi-layered record, a trace of multiple histories, multiple authors, and multiple haunting returns. As a metaphor, the palimpsest reminds us that there is no terra nullius, or blank page, that recordings, though they appear stable, are always in motion, that no act of erasure is ever complete, and that the disappeared can always reappear to challenge the dominant scripts of the present. The palimpsest sharpens our attention to the many multi-track recordings that surround us, from the stratigraphic layers of the Earth's crust, to the slow accumulations of culture over the course of human history, to the layers of sound on a master tape by the Beatles, to the stacking up of cover versions in the wake of those recordings, to all of the future terrestrial layers that will continue to partially erase and reinscribe them long after we are gone. All of these entities are layered on top of one another, interacting unpredictably with one another, from the beginning of time right up to the end of the world.
How comes the sun? It comes here daily. It returns reliable as the moon. It brings the day along.
Tessuel, tesiaquam, hue il jues.
There goes the sun, sunset, and then again it comes, sun, sun, sun. You can see it coming. Slow rise, sunrise, as predictable as the sun. Springtime, summertime, the seasons, the Gregorian calendar, Tem, Alila, marked by the coming of Salmonberry. The Hopewell people built their city, their mounds, to the movements of the moon. Their lunar architecture scraping space for lunar view. Moonrise, moonset. Here comes the moon. If you look hard enough, you can see it coming, scraping through the cloud cover.
What is that sound? It sounds like a record needle scraping. What is being scraped away? The calf's hair by the knife? The old regime by the revolution? The earth's face by the glacier? Embodied knowledge by artificial intelligence?
Scratch that, let's try it again.
Okay, what is that sound? It sounds like scraping. What is being scraped away? The first draft? The subversive thought?
The first draft.
The rehearsal? The alternate tape?
The first draft.
The click track? The magnetic tape? The disintegration loops?
Track.
The memory of past
The first
listenings?
draft.
In school, we used to say, we listened to A Love Supreme so much we wore the grooves right off that album.
Listening to recorded music is a form of erasure too.
The sound of the scribe scraping text off the vellum. The sound of the plow scraping old soil into new furrows. The sound of the needle scraping in circles at the end of the record. These ghost-like whispers of the erased and overwritten persist beneath our language, our lands, our music. Can you stretch your ear to hear that which has been erased?
Can you stretch your ear to hear that which has been erased?
Can you stretch your ear
Scratch that. Let's try it again.
to hear that which has been erased?
Scratch that. Let's try it again.
Scratch that. Let's try it again.
Scratch that. Let's try
Scratch
it
that.
again.
Let's try it again.
That. Let's try it again.
Scratch that. Let's try it again.
Scratch.
that. Let's try it again.
Scratch. Here writes the sun, not the sun's effects, but the sun's writing. Writing the land with rays, with beams, what we call schechegelis to siaquam, literally designs of the sun. The sun's designs designing warmth, green growth, inscribing wildfire. Vitamin D writing our bones, boosting serotonin levels, designing good moods, designing melanoma, burn, tan.
Sun co-writing with chlorophyll, pigment absorbing sunlight.
Collaborating with water and carbon dioxide to write oxygen, life.
I've loved this cover ever since I first heard it a dozen years ago. It felt to me like with this cover, George Benson had uncovered something profound and precious that had always lay beneath the painfully familiar sounds of George Harrison's song, a song that seemed to always be playing when I turned into the oldies station on my staticky AM car radio.
Remember car radios? Remember static?
Several weeks ago, on a Saturday, my friend Maureen Mann and I were the only people in the New York University music department. Our office doors were both open, so I called out to her, as I occasionally do, "Hey, Maureen, want to hear something?" She came in, smiling, and sat down. I played her George Benson's cover, And as I listened to it, looking down at the floor, imagining what it must be like for her to hear this beautiful rendition for the first time, tears welled up in my eyes. The song ended, and I looked up at her expectantly. And to my surprise and dismay, but also fascination, she said, "Well, I sure hated that." For Maureen, this cover was a kind of sonic graffiti, a crass reinscription that disturbed and disfigured a song and a band that she loved. Or worse, it makes Here Comes the Sun sound like smooth jazz, she said.
When we listen to covers, are we listening to them or through them?
Is the cover song an homage, an appropriation, a disturbance, a discovery, a translation, a doppelganger, a ghost? Or is it simply one more layer in the stratigraphy of our culture, vibrating agonistically with the versions that precede and follow it?
I sit in my car in Vancouver's morning rush hour traffic, commuting to my daughter's daycare and my other daughter's school. My 3-year-old daughter asks a 2-word question.
Inuktitut levitating?
With these 2 words, my daughter calls in her request for a song that's been at the top of the charts for both of my daughters for over a month now. She's requesting the song Ikiaqqik by the group Riit. Ikiaqqik is an Inuktitut word meaning the act of traveling through space and time. Not only is Ikiaqqik the title, but it is used as a katijak or throat game and provides a foundation for this cover song. Ikiaqqik is one of a significantly increasing number of Indigenous language translations of pop songs that have received critical acclaim in the past few years. In 2024, Inuk singer Ilisippai received a Juno for her album Inuktitut, consisting entirely of covers in Inuktitut language. The album includes Te Manga Limak, a cover of Cyndi Lauper's Time After Time, absolutely beautiful cover. Isuma Gijun Nati Nuk Tik, a cover of Metallica's The Unforgiven. And Inun Iavarit, a cover of Blondie's Heart of Glass. Beatles songs have also been covered in many Indigenous languages, but notably in the song Blackbird that exists in both Mi'kmaq and Hunkaminam versions. Inspired by my daughter's love for Inuktitut levitating and artists like Ilisippai, one of the first things I did for this presentation was to translate Here Comes the Sun into Halkomelem. The glottal stops, the alveolar lateral fricative, the sloppy S, as my downriver relatives, Musqueam people call it, sound of the river, the winds, hard X's, soft X's, our words' melodic pitch stresses like rays of sun.
Het gmalt ilwell hydd tysgietle. Calag het gmal awa ikule silalam.
Halkomelem is a challenging language to speak, let alone to sing. The recording here is of my friend Marion Newman, a mezzo-soprano who has had numerous operas and songs in various Indigenous languages commissioned for her to sing. She sings this cover beautifully, even as Harrison's melody resists the sounds of Halkomelem.
An awkward mix, incommensurable song life, serious, multi-layered music.
But what would it mean to strive for consistency? There is already striking consistency between the repetition here and the repetition in our Hallmark songs. If we understand Harrison's song as a particular inscription of place, the radical gray, the rain and cloud that necessitates a song celebrating the coming, yet not the arrival, necessarily, of the sun, if we understand this, then it might make sense to turn towards Saltmach, our lands, in making such a Hallmark translation of Here Comes the Sun, these lands including the sky, the weather, and changes that inscribe our lands. Equala to Elila, equala to Scala. Here come the salmonberries. Here come the huckleberries. My daughters and I have been waiting for a while. Often, literal translation from one language to another can work against the translation of feeling, of cultural specificity. With the exception of the line, "Sun, we're coming to see you," I did not translate this from Hallmark values. To do so for the whole song would entail treating the sun, our relation, as we do the rest of the world, as something we would come to see and visit. We are not passive subjects that the object sun comes to. Sun, we're coming to see you. The sun is coming to see salmonberries and huckleberries.
Here's another cover. Okay, audience participation time. By a show of hands, who among you likes Nina Simone's cover more than the George Benson cover I played earlier? Thank you. How many of you like it more than the Beatles original? Thank you. Is an original ever really original? What multi-track recordings, what unseen ecological layers lie beneath the genius creation of the so-called original version of any song? George Harrison's Here Comes the Sun is suspended in the middle of a musical and ecological palimpsest, nestled beneath 100 covers, but also sitting atop many millennia of odes to the sun, to the melting ice, and to our many little darlings. There could be no Here Comes the Sun without them. Beneath all these layers lies a billion-year planetary multi-track recording, a palimpsest of actual melting ice and warming Earth, an inexorable solar return. There could be no Here Comes the Sun without them. Sun, sun, sun,
Sun,
here it comes.
Sun, here it comes.
Sun, 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 here it comes.
Sun, sun.
Sun, 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 here it comes.
Harrison captures the sound of the coming sun. With ambling hum, he sings as if to himself. It comes easily. It sings more easily than the written form. An incantation sounds to make the sun appear, this happy sound lifting moods, the simple warmth of the sun, carefree enough, only sounding phoneme, unless these sounds are the thing, not as an aside, but holding the sun.
As temperatures climb ever closer to the limits of human habitability, are we approaching a point where the line, "Here comes the sun," will lose its ability to express a happy, optimistic vibe?
In other words, we know the sun can scorch the earth, but can it incinerate a metaphor?
How will the line, "Here comes the sun," feel once heat-related death replaces polluted air as the #1 global killer? How will it feel during the next heat wave in Paris, or Pretoria, or Peshawar, or wherever you are from? Will it sound like a hauntology of the Holocene, the era before global warming? Will it sound like the hubris of capitalism and climate denial? Will it sound like a warning of the heat that is to come? Will it sound like we are mourning lost species, lost friends? In other words, will the sun of the future make this song feel like it has been transposed into a minor key? This is the post-history of multitrack recording, one where human covers are partially erased and reinscribed by the sun itself, whose powers are magnified by an atmosphere seeded with anthropogenic gases and particulates. A warming atmosphere in which human flesh becomes vellum for recording life on Earth.
A life of sun inscriptions, the burn, the melanoma, the leatherization of skin.
Yes, in this sense, we are all already palimpsestic covers of this bewildering song and its many predecessors. Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here it comes. Will we ever be able to hear this tune as we once did? And what will it signify once we are gone? Our songs, our poems, all our cultural achievements are all contingent upon and subordinate to this volatile environment that we helped create. But who is that we, really? Some of us, and some of our ancestors, bear more responsibility for this situation than others. And yet all of us are equally inked into the grand planetary palimpsest. All of us are subject to erasure, reemergence, bleed through, commingling. All of us are records. We are all recording.
Let me repeat a few things. A bit out of tune, a bit out of flow. Nina Simone sings, "It's all right now." George Benson sings, "It's all right now."
Sun, 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 here it comes. Sun, 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 here
Sun,
it comes.
sun,
Sun, sun,
sun.
sun, here it comes. Scheilchelis
Scheilchelis tesiakwa. Now we try and write out the sun's designs, the fires, the rising ocean temperatures, protective overscript, but sun, 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 still here it comes, burning through our protections, our sunscreen, our air conditioning. The Arctic ice sheet, glacial melt. Now in Vancouver,
In New York,
I receive daily heat warnings.
I get alerts. Here comes the sun.
Scorchers. Last week, the headlines here read, "Paris is melting."
Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun.
sun.
Here comes
A
the
manic
sun.
repetition
Here comes the sun. Here comes
speaking
the sun.
of desperation.
Here comes the sun.
In this palimpsest, in this refusal, the scraping off of the sun's doctrine, we might then try to erase the sun's effects, writing out an architecture around us, over us, air conditioning encasements. Right now, says Casey Green's dog through the flames, "It's fine."
And I said, "It's all right, it's all."
Another sun, an artificial apocalyptic sun, Olafur Eliasson's The Weather Project, allows us to bask in the sun's glow and observe ourselves basking by way of mirror installed on the ceiling of Tate Modern's Turbine Hall. In 1969, the ice was slowly melting. This little red dot, right now, NASA says, is ocean's temperatures rising. This little red dot here right now, NASA says, is Antarctica's ice mass melting, 136 tons per year.
Billion tons.
Billion tons per year. Greenland's ice mass melts 267 billion tons per year.
Billion tons per year.
Per year. And I say,
And I said,
it's all right.
"It's all right, it's all right."
It's all right. All is certainly not all right now. in the new TV drama Paradise, or in the countless other action movies where ice sheets and polar ice caps melt, rendering Earth's surface uninhabitable. Officials ignore climate scientists, paleoclimatologists, all the warnings.
Here comes the sun, here comes the sun.
And yet, as one of these films says,
here comes the sun, here comes the sun.
Earth's billions of inhabitants are unaware that the planet has an expiration date. These films submerge cities, if not the entire surface of the Earth. In these films, scientists race to save their families. In the films, Earth's inhabitants are unaware. I'm sure you saw this coming. These films, this art of climate grief, this space for shared feeling, this opportunity to feel climate catastrophe, yet this is not the fault of the sun.
This is not the fault of the sun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, timely and certainly memorable for all of us. So thank you very, very much again for such a wonderful talk. We do have a little bit of time for questions. If anybody has some. Don't be shy. There's one here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That was amazing. I had to actually resist the urge to stand up and give you a standing ovation. And I don't think I'm alone in saying that. I have a question regarding the Indigenous language covers that are happening. How are they being received? It sounds like there's a decent level of respect and actual consumption of these in Canada, but sort of what's the history of that happening? Because I'm noticing, as you can tell from the accent, I'm Australian, and we're starting, in the last probably decade, we're getting more and more music that's being sung in the 300 Indigenous languages that we have, and they are getting, you know, mainstream popularity. So how is that sort of playing out in Canada?
Yeah, they've been, I mean, I think particularly, so for those who don't know, the Junos are the Canadian awards, you know, the national awards for best pop song, you know, all of the different categories. And so it's quite a, high honor to receive it. And so Ikiaqqik for the entire set, the entire album of tracks in Inuktitut, these, covers in Inuktitut, won, I can't remember the category, but it was a very high profile thing. And I think also, it has become more mainstream. So that's definitely happening. But I also want to take the question in a slightly different direction, because these have massive uptake within our communities as well as opportunities for language learning. It is one of the best ways. We have probably one of the richest collections of Christmas carols in Halcomelum, because they're what get people to learn, like across generations. And similarly with songs, that are very well known. Time After Time by Cyndi Lauper in Inuktitut. Of course, I'm going to say, my daughters sing along with Inuktitut levitating. Ikiaqqik, and they're not learning Inuktitut, but I feel so proud that they're also getting the sounds of Inuktitut, our northern neighbors in their holding them in their mouths and bringing them into their bodies. It's such a wonderful thing, and so there's a really large uptake within our communities as well of these songs, which is super important, and I think is one of the reasons why there have been so many covers as well. In order to promote language learning. Thanks for your question. Absolutely, absolutely.
Hello. Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for that. I don't think I've ever been at an academic presentation that has actually made me cry before. That was really affecting. And I want to ask a question about like affect and emotions, because one of the things that I know that people have been struggling with the whole climate situation is how you actually get people to feel what the situation is. Like, we can know it, but feeling it is something else. And you conveyed that so well through that. So I guess my question is about the role of academic discourse and the whether the sort of traditional ways of, the current traditional ways, the way that we would present at a conference like this, whether there is a point to that anymore. Like, where does academia go at this point in time? Because it's something I've been struggling with, but seeing the way that you did this today shows me that there are other ways of doing things that may be more effective than the things that we have been doing up until now. So I guess I'm just interested in any of your thoughts on how we communicate better at a point in time where we need to communicate better than we have up until now.
Thank you. That's a pretty monumental question, and I'm grateful for it. I think Dylan and I, you and I have kind of different trajectories through the academy that have brought us to, if not comparable places, to places where our work has begun speaking to one another. I agree with you that that particularly for someone like me in the humanities, there is no new knowledge of climate change and looming ecological collapse that I possess, that I want to, I don't have an argument that I want to convince an audience of. I think a lot of scholarship on the page and at conferences proceeds in what you might call, for lack of a better term, explication mode. And what I think both of us are trying to do on the page and in conferences is work in evocation mode. So not so much try to drive home an argument, but try, exactly as you said, to kind of evoke a feel and have there be, whether it's on the page or in the conference hall, have there be a kind of a collective feeling. And my personal hope is that feeling is, that there's some value in us feeling something together. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. I want to add to that, and I really appreciate the former Keynote presentation as well. It really made me think about our sweatiness on the page.
Absolutely.
Right? Or how we maybe take that away. We take a shower in the essay.
I thought there were lots of connections between the two keynotes.
Absolutely great connections. But on the other hand, doing this kind of work requires a different kind of time and craft. And I think we've both worked at that in different ways and also been involved in different art forms through our careers that have allowed us to get to this place here. But it takes a lot of time if you're working, even in thinking about transitions and effects and these kinds of things. They make a difference, right? And so they're part of that work. And we also struggle, getting to the spot where we have things to share, in terms of the research itself. So there is that challenge, obviously, but it's important to note, that there's a craft and takes some time, and also to say, I would never say, that's it, the essay's out of here. We have the rise of auto theory and different kind of poetic forms, folks like Fred Moten, all the way to, lots of different kinds of people working in these forms. But the essay, we also can work in a very, an affective way within the essay and making choices within the essay, even being attentive to pacing and time and craft. I think that we don't, you know, it feels like, oh, I don't have time for that, or maybe that's just not where we've come to or been exposed to in our own training. So, you know, I absolutely feel this kind of mode of evocation is more and more necessary, but it also is quite a challenge, right, to get to that spot. Yeah.
I'll just quickly add, if I can do a quick shout out. I went to UCLA for grad school, and I was absolutely, this was in the very early 2000s. I had this professor who I think is a member of IASPM, Bob Fink. Do you guys know Bob Fink? I see some nodding heads. Bob gave a lecture on the kind of the history of house music to a crowd of about 300 people at UCLA, and wove, you know, recordings and kind of live musical improvisations into the piece. And this was, I think it was 1999. It was my first year of grad school, and he completely destroyed me. And I've been trying for my entire career. Bob, are you in the audience? He's not. Thank God. I've been trying for my entire career to come up to the level that he gave at this just kind of in-house talk. And I'll die before I get there. But you know, I think there are people like that who, you know, I think we all have people who set the bar for us really high, and we just kind of aspire to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So I'm just curious as how do you feel, like in the movies that you showed, there's all, and in popular culture, there's often this idea of there's a very climactic, you know, apocalyptic, and it's one beautiful moment and everything is over. And whereas like the actual process is, I guess, more of a slow burn or a boil. And so I just was kind of curious as like, how do we navigate this kind of tension between this? Like anytime we start talking about these topics, people, what they have in their mind is like apocalypse, I guess is the word they would use. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful apocalypse, that's the idea. It's like the idea of apocalypse, I feel, is like, it's cathartic in a way, whereas what's going to happen is not going to be beautiful or cathartic, it's just going to be shitty and boring.
There's a real danger, and I wanted us to, you know, mark this a little bit try and mark it a little bit in the presentation around, you know, climate empathy slipping into a kind of, you know, catharsis-based consumption, right? And I know that there are many artists. I'm very critical of artists. I won't name them here, maybe, but you know, who similarly try and provide the cathartic spectacle. And then we can, you know, in a way, it becomes very consumable. We can say, I really felt that, I know it, I can sort of put it as knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily bring us toward or galvanize us toward certain things. Or I will name something briefly because, what's the name of the artist with the large-scale catastrophic?
Baratinsky?
Yes, Bertinsky, Edward Bertinsky. You know, there was an exhibition at the Art Gallery of Ontario a number of years ago where these, you know, massive. I'm sure you're very familiar with these massive photographs of, you know, the destruction of the Earth. And at the very end, there was an opportunity to involve the viewers, the audience, you know, who came to see these works by, you know, posting little Post-it notes like that said, "The climate matters to me because," and you'd sort of post these everywhere. And I was just left. I was like, well, what's this? You know, what is the means to actually galvanize some kind of action or difference? And I think about that a lot, so that it doesn't. You know, catharsis doesn't take up all the space, right? The spectacle doesn't take up all the space without us being moved towards something. So that's a challenge I sit with, and I don't know that I'm successful at, but it really, it's something that matters to me.
And I'll just add a few other maybe citations. There's a absolutely wonderful scholar named Claire Colebrook, who's at, I think she's at Penn State University, but I believe she's Australian. And Claire writes about media that focus on the end of the world. And her point is that, you know, that phrase, the end of the world, is a very first world phrase, and it's projected into the future. And what it really means is the end of my world in which I feel comfortable. And Claire's point, and she's not alone in making it, is that world as a kind of coherent, stable, predictable, rich, imagined environment is a condition that many people throughout history and throughout, across the planet have not had the luxury of inhabiting. So, the end of the world is the state in which most humans and non-humans have been living. So that's a way to kind of problematize that. And then another brilliant scholar and theologian named Catherine Keller writes on apocalypse, and she, unlike me, speaks ancient Greek, and so, she went back to the actual etymology of apocalypse, and it doesn't mean end of the world. It's been misinterpreted to mean end of the world. What it signifies actually is a disclosure of the actual conditions in which we are living. So it's more about like clarifying the state of the world than some sort of spectacular, cathartic, mic drop sort of situation. So I think those are, basically I think what we're doing here is we're inverting, we're doing the phenomenological move of inverting foreground and background and saying, okay, here's this song, and we know how to feel about a song, and the song seems to be in the foreground, but what happens when environmental conditions not only place the song, like environmental conditions occupy the foreground, as they always have, but that the agent is revealed to be that thing which we thought was the background. And the agent is acting upon what we thought was the foreground. The sun is acting upon the song and forcing it into a new configuration, right? Forcing it into a new mode of signification. That ultimately, for me, isn't about apocalypse or kind of aestheticization of the end of the world, but it's more about humility, about like belatedly having the feel of humility in the face of where we're at.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot more about process as method. And in this beautiful, evocative presentation, it seems to me that there are many possible points of entry, which is one of the wonderful things about it. That's something that I really liked about it. And I'm just wondering what yours was. How did you start this collaborative process? Where did you start?
I said,
Pay no attention to the man behind the screen. Like, do you really want to reveal that?
well, I said, Martin, please come in and do this with me. So Martin and I have been engaging in a larger palimpsestic set of processes, questions, practices, and this was a really interesting opportunity to continue this work, which I really value, like cross arts, a really exploratory, experimental kinds of erasure and relayering and re-adding, taking agency away. We haven't really done that part yet, but really working through this practice. And so for me, that is incredibly valuable to be able to center the research work that I do collaboratively through different kinds of processes and practices. So it was lovely to just to have the opportunity to continue that work. We've both worked with palimpsest for a long time, and then we kind of just said, okay, let's do some stuff. Yeah. Do you want to add anything?
Not really. I guess I'll just quickly say that about your observation that there are multiple points of entry. I think there are multiple points of entry to everything. Thank God. And I feel like maybe one of the things that we're trying to do is acknowledge the irreducible complexity of the world and of every constituent piece of it, including a very well-known sonorous object, by the Beatles, that as soon as we begin kind of scraping at it, we can get to that irreducibility that makes it no longer recognizable as, or reducible to a commodity, or an earworm, or something made by and for humans, or something made in Abbey Road Studios. Like that I think is part of this project, and that can be kind of infuriating, to not have, or disorienting, for us, to not have, to not be grounded in an argument or in something that we're trying to communicate. It's like, okay, then how do you set parameters for anything? And I think we struggled a little bit with how to set parameters for this, kind of shaggy dog of a talk. So you put your finger on it.
I love shaggy dogs. They're the best.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've all been treated to an extraordinary and highly memorable keynote. So please join me in extending a really warm thanks to Jay, Martin, Daughtry, and Dylan Robinson.
And thanks to And thanks to you all, and thanks to the organizers. It's a real honor to be here. And thanks to you.
And to you.